Okay, well, welcome everybody to our monthly systems mastermind. I know a few of these faces, but not everyone. My name is Susan Glenz. I lead the Susan Glenz team in our Rochester office. I'm the broker in the Canandaigua office, partnered with Chuck. So a little bit of experience in real estate, and operations and systems are definitely part of my love language, for sure. I think anyone on my team can attest to that. Shannon, listing and operation leader on our team. So for today, I don't have a set agenda for today. Sometimes we'll pre-advertise that today we're going to talk about listing systems, or we're going to talk about lead generation systems. And every once in a while, I like to mix it up with just kind of a free-for-all mastermind where we can all just share and talk about what specifically is going on in your business and what your needs are. And since we have a little bit of a smaller group today, we may have some more folks join us, and they certainly can. Since we have a little bit of a smaller group, that works well, right? Because it's harder to mastermind and get focused on someone's business with a large group. So Katie, welcome. Steve, welcome. Shannon, welcome. If there's specific things that you're finding you're having some challenges with, why don't you put the collective brain trust of this group to work for you? We can talk through some things that we do. Sound good? Awesome. So is there anything in particular, a system that you're working on, or you're missing in your business, or you're struggling with in your business?
Hi.
Hi, Steve.
So I tried to get on this like months ago and I couldn't because I work another job, but I got some time today.
Awesome.
So one thing I have a question for is, like, maybe you were at this point in your business, like I'm seeing success, but I'm at that point where I see that I need systems, period.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of asking, like, when you were in your career at that point where you started seeing success, but like you have to have organization, you have to have something reminding you because you're going to start getting lost.
Mm-hmm.
How did you start that process of systems, of organization? Like, what did that look like, if that makes sense?
Yeah, great question. And I think that it's a really relevant question for anyone, no matter what part of their business they're in. For me, I always approached my business from the very beginning with the mindset of, if I'm going to do this once, I want to make sure that I document it and that I make a checklist of some sort, because I don't want to have to do this again. Meaning, I'm going to have to do the activities again, but I don't want to have to be in this spot ever again where I'm scrambling with what to do and how to do it. So everything I went into as a new agent was, okay, how do I document this so it's repeatable? How do I make this a consistent experience for my client? And the only way to do that is to create some systems. So the number one thing I would suggest is document everything. Get in the habit of writing down exactly what you do and the order in which you do it, so that you can literally hand that off as a checklist to your assistant one day, right? You're taking everything that's in your head and you're putting it down on paper, as far as these are the standards by which I run my business. And if we just break down an agent's business for a second, and like the types of systems that you might want to document, it would be, all right, what do I do every time I get a new buyer client? Start to finish. What do I do every time I get a new listing client, a new seller client? What do I do? How do I, prepare a listing presentation, to how do I input it in the MLS, then order the sign, then order the photos, like all of that. Just that way you're not going off of best. You can use something as simple as, I definitely don't recommend just for you. I suggest getting it in a digital format. So Word, Excel. I know a lot of agents and teams use Trello. Command has a great checklist, kind of like Trello inside of Command opportunities. So find a system that is digital that works for you to record these. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be a start. I think sometimes, Steve, do you ever run into this where you feel like, oh, it's got to be perfect? And so that might prevent you from starting somewhere.
Definitely.
Does that help?
Yeah, I understand like checklist and then break down from there on each thing. Cause I'm like lost on systems right now, I guess.
You're not necessary to be the systems person, right? But until we can afford to hire someone that is good with the system, until we get our business to a point that we can hire someone to do that, we have to be that for our business, right? So I hope that helps, just starting with brain dumping some of the things that you're doing, because ultimately, when you grow your business to a point where you want to bring on help, you're going to want to train them on how does Steve take a listing? How does Steve service a buyer? How does Steve close out a sale and ask for the review and update the database with their new home address? Like all those things. It can be the simplest thing. Write it down, because if you're doing it, someone else is going to do it for you. Like the more, sorry, I swear there's like a mouse in here. I'm like, what is that noise? I also found myself, Steve, I would reference my own checklist because I would want to make sure I wasn't missing anything the busier that I got. So in gaps or, oh, that's not right. Let me move that. I don't do that here. I do that here. So I was scrubbing it for each transaction I was doing. I was scrubbing my checklist. So don't just brain dump and then set it aside and never use it again. Make it something that you use, right? With every client you engage with, pull out that checklist and cross it off, and you're going to find you will improve that checklist every time. Shannon knows on my team that when working with a client, we're always looking at how can we make our checklist better, our systems better, right? It's never set in stone. It's always growing with us as a business as we're morphing how we do. Does that help, Steve?
Yeah, I like the
I
checklist
think
idea.
that
I don't know if I broke up there. I like the checklist
with that
idea.
comes time, right? Okay. It's simple. So everybody can implement a checklist, right? You don't have to be a systems genius to implement a checklist. I think where the challenge comes in for most of us agents is that we are wired to move very fast. We're typically high Ds and we want things done yesterday, where a checklist requires us to slow down, requires us to get in the details and the weeds. And that's not a muscle we like to flex a lot. So the discipline inside of this for you isn't going to be in what to put on the checklist. You know what you do. It's going to be in slowing down and actually taking the time to create it, because it's going to feel counterproductive, right? Feel, and it should, like it's taking you a lot longer to do this, but it should. You're investing time now to save a ton of time later. So just keep bringing yourself back to that. When you get that urge to just screw the checklist and just do your own thing, bring yourself back to, I'm putting the time in now, so it saves me time later. Okay. Awesome. So for those of you who just joined us, when we kicked this mastermind off, I started by saying that a lot of times we'll start this mastermind with a particular theme in mind. Like today we're going to talk about listings, or today we're going to talk about lead generation systems or whatever. I wanted to create space today for who's ever on the call. If you have a burning desire to ask a question about a system in your business, or you need help, let's use the collective brain trust of the people on this call to talk about what they do. So on that note, if you guys are all thinking about what you might need help with, on that note, does anybody else here have some advice for Steve as an individual agent that is looking to build systems in his business, and some tips on how to do that? Okay. Any other questions or things that you're experiencing in your business right now as it relates to implementing systems for consistency?
I'll go again. Oh, Chris. Okay, I have another question. What do you use for systems to follow up with clients, either past clients or clients now? Like I've heard Command, but I've also heard like Google Calendar. I'm just kind of curious what you use to do that.
So you cut out just a little bit, Steve, and I don't know if it's my computer. It says my internet connection is a little unstable. So all I heard was, what do you use to?
Yeah, I don't, is it my computer? I don't know.
Might be. Can you just repeat your question?
Yeah, what systems do you use to follow up with past clients?
I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know. So what do you use for, oh, okay. Sorry, I saw the chat. I'm gonna mute
who's ever talking. No, it's okay.
I'm just curious what systems you use for following up with past clients or current clients. Like I've heard Command, but I've also heard like Google Calendar. I know I talked with Jason at the Butera team that he uses Google Calendar. I'm just kind of curious what you use for those follow-ups, those reminders of reaching out to clients that you have, past clients, stuff like that.
Yeah, so this is a really important one because follow up with the leads that we have is crucial, right? So we use a CRM. We don't use Command yet. We will probably transition to Command at some point. It's a lot of work to get a team's business transitioned from one platform to another. Command has made a lot of improvements since they first launched, and I'm really excited about what they offer. My team has used Follow Up Boss for a very long time. I am not advertising for Follow Up Boss. I would 100% say any new agent should use Command. It's included. It's a great tool. We're just not transitioned yet. Okay. So, but Follow Up Boss does a lot of the things that Command does, and Command does a lot of the things that Follow Up Boss does. But the reason I like it, and Command does the same thing, is you can create tasks inside of the CRM. So you can keep all of your notes on your conversation with that person inside of the CRM. You can add a task that will sync to your calendar. So rather than have a CRM with people's contact information and then a calendar over here and then a notebook over here, and you have all these systems that don't talk to each other, if you can pick one system, which should be a strong CRM, to have those follow-up items in, that CRM should be able to do that for you. And Command absolutely can do that for you. There's a difference between following up with leads and nurturing your database of people and past clients that you want to touch on a regular basis. And one system that we're talking about now in bold is called the DTD2. So the DTD2 it stands for Do the Database To. And it's a great follow-up system or structure. It's not a system like an actual tool that you put notes in, but you can use this structure to follow up with people in your database regularly. Because a lot of times as agents, it's a matter of lead gen is who do we call, right? They don't know who to call and they don't know what to say. Those two things, if we can solve those two things, lead gen becomes not only easy, but fun, right? So tell me who to call and tell me what to say. Okay, cool. DTD2 helps you identify who to call. It takes that question right off the table, okay? So what it looks like is it takes the alphabet. Now, how many letters are in the alphabet, guys? You can type in the chat. I'm only doing, I know you know the answer. I just want action. So type in the chat how many letters are in the alphabet. Help me. Google it. I don't care if you don't Google it. Thank you, Steve. 26. Okay. 26 letters in the alphabet. Interesting. 13 weeks in one quarter, right? 13 times 4 is 52, and there's 52 weeks in a year. So magically, it works out that if we call 2 letters in our database every week for 13 weeks, we touch the entire 26 letters of the alphabet. So DTD2 identifies the letters of the alphabet every week. Name and you don't want to wait to follow up with them the next time.
Hey, Susan, your connection's really bad, at least for me.
Yeah, me too. I just put it in the chat. I thought it was my connection, but it's not. Okay.
And Susan, now you're muted.
Is that better? Yeah, okay. I switched network, so hopefully this works okay. So I feel like I was talking for a long time and then I got cut off. What did you hear about Do the Database 2? Should I start over?
We got that there were 26 letters, and that easily splits into doing, 13 weeks. And I don't know if you got into, hey, that's a quarter of the year.
Okay, so yeah,
the part.
thank you. I will go back. That must be when my connection froze. So the beauty of the DTD2 system is that, like Steve was asking for follow-up. We lost Steve, but it's not necessarily to follow up with leads, because we don't want to follow up with a lead once a quarter, right? That won't get us anywhere. It's a system to follow up with the people in our life, the people in our database, past clients that we want to stay in relationship with. And what I was sharing is that most agents struggle with lead generation, myself included, guys, because we don't know who to call and we don't know what to say. Now, don't know who to call might not mean, we might have a database of, let's say we've got 300 contacts, plenty of people we can call, but it's sometimes our brain gets stuck on, well, who should I call today? And we just get stuck there, versus if someone were to hand me a list and say, call these 10 people, they're giving me an order and I'm just calling those 10 people. And my brain doesn't have to think about, should I call this person? Should I not call this person, right? So the beauty of a system is that it's almost like it's like a checklist. We talked about checklists earlier, right? It tells you who to call. So we were breaking down the numbers that there's 26 letters in the alphabet. Divide that by 2 is 13. So if the DTD2 system gives you 2 letters to call a week based on their last name, then you're calling everyone in the alphabet, which means everyone in your database, once a quarter. So I don't have that off the top of my head. I can tell you, if you're in bold, you probably are aware of this right now because we're going through what those letters are. But there is I think I took a screenshot of it in our bold notebook that I can probably share somehow, that says like week 1 is A and W, week 2 is B and M, week 3 is N and R. I'm just making those up, but that's how it works. So that now you've taken off the variable, who do I call, right? If you just stick to this and you call those people, you don't have to worry about that. Now here's a key. And our bold coach talks about this, to not have call bias. Do you know what call bias is? What does he mean when he says call bias?
Is that,
Probably say, I don't think they're gonna want to give me any business, so I'll just skip over them.
Exactly. It's that little drunk monkey that says, oh, they're not worth it, or I have nothing to offer them, or they have nothing to offer me. It's, if we can stick to the letters and call them religiously, you'd be surprised the opportunity you can dig up. And he just, you story upon story of people that stuck to the task at hand and were able to dig up opportunity. So that's the first thing. That system eliminates who to call. Okay.
Hey, Susan, can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
Okay, so in command, once they make the initial calls, so say the day that they call them, put them on the quarterly call plan, which is one of the smart plans. And then command will give you a reminder every 90 days to call that person. So you don't have to think about it again anymore.
Oh, cool. So command will basically put that letter into the next proper week.
Yeah. So if they just say, so if Steve calls, Susan today, set it on that day, put Susan in the quarterly call plan, smart plan, and then he'll get a reminder every 90 days to call you.
Cool.
But
Thank you for that.
This might be a dumb question, but to start, is that kind of the way to start? Just make your initial phone call, set a reminder, and go from there. Like, you have to start somewhere, right? So just start calling people, then set your system.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And I love that, Chris, the idea of the reminder to call. And if you don't know how to use a smart plan, and I will tell you that one thing my team ran into is we had so many smart plans in our database running that my agents' tasks were just mounting up to the point where the tasks became white noise because they were so complicated, like add an address for the property they inquired on, just little things that like agents do not care about. So we had to clean up our tasks and make it something that agents cared about again, right? It's almost like too much white noise, you don't pay attention to it anymore. So I like what Chris said, because if you're someone that you don't have a lot of tasks, that's a very clean way to do it. But what I love about the DTD2 system is that even if you don't have a reminder, if you just every Sunday or Monday going into your week, your letters for that week, you won't miss anyone with the last name of those letters, even if you don't have a task to remind you, because the letters are the system, right? So there's not a lot of actual logistics to this particular system, which I love. What you want to make sure you do is you're able to pull a smart list, or somehow organize your contacts, whether you're using command, follow up boss, Excel, whatever it is. You're gonna want to order them in by last name and then filter by the letters, and that's easy. Then you've got your list, and you can pull your list on a Sunday night for the whole week, right? And then the most important part is what you say and recording any information you learned, because you're making a lot of calls. The following quarter, you want to look really smart to that person and be able to go back and say, hey, I remember when we spoke, a couple of months ago, you mentioned you guys just had a new baby. How is Emily doing? Right? Your clients are going to love that you remembered not only they had a baby, but the baby's name and your database. There's a reason they call it a smart database, right? Because it's to make us smart. I don't know about you, but I can't remember all the kids' names of everybody in my database. I rely on my tool to help me. Okay, let's pivot to what to say, because Keller Williams helps us with this as well. Bold helps us with this, what to say. I see my friend Jason Mancuso on this call. Hey, Jason. Jason is also taking Bold right now. And he leads an amazing sales team on the Anthony Butera team. So Jason, do you guys incorporate DTD2 into your sales team?
No, we do not, but I love the concept. I'm big on like this concept of systems in general. I love it in terms of like defining I use a terrible analogy, so, and I realize I'm talking all the board here. I apologize. I use a terrible analogy, so I apologize if anybody's like, had loss from this or experienced it. But you should set yourself up in this business to where you could operate if you had Alzheimer's. And again, awful analogy. I apologize. But point being is like, don't be tasked with remembering what you have to do on any given day or any given week, because you won't. And we have bad days, we have bad weeks, and if you don't have a system that tells you specifically what you need to be doing each day and each week, there's just the slippage to the crack, so to speak, is going to be enormous. So yeah, I mean the alphabet system, D2 or R2D2, whatever you want to call it, is a great tool to use to keep you on track with that. If you're not using that, like, have something that essentially, the concept that I play out is basically a trigger, a notification, a reminder, whatever you want to call it, just be told what to do and when, and then build it back out again as you go and as you make contacts. This way that you can, if you call somebody that you're told to call today and they don't pick up, you leave a voicemail, and you based on what's going on, you're told when to call them again next.
I love that analogy. You weren't on the call when we first kicked it off, but we were talking about a brand new agent, like what should they do to start putting systems in their business. And I talked a lot about checklists and how we need to slow down and document what we do. It's going to take more time now, but it'll save us a lot of time later. So we don't have to keep it in our head. And I love that. Like, it's like you have Alzheimer's. If you literally took a listing today and tomorrow you woke up and took another one, but completely forgot what you did yesterday, you better want to reference that checklist, right? I love that. And yeah, DTD2, like Jason said, there's plenty of different things you can do or systems you can create to touch your database. I will tell you, from my experience, I have not found or heard of another one as simple and as comprehensive as DTD2. It covers all the alphabets, right? The math works out beautifully that you touch your database once a quarter. And it can be a phone call, it can be a text, it can be a social media message. Like, I don't want people to think that it has to be a phone call, although we do know that that's a great way to reach people. To be honest, a lot of people today prefer texting. They're like, wait a minute, why are you calling me? Because texting is just it's kind of woven into the fabric of our community, right? It's just used to be a phone call. Now it's text. Now people think, what's wrong? Why are you calling me? So, Mary Ann, did you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, I apologize for being late. I was out showing houses. But what is this D2D2 R2D2 thing you're talking about?
Okay, so I'll back up because we had some other people join us as well. So DTD2 is a database touch system that means do the database to, Keller Williams, we love our acronyms, right? We love a good acronym. And so basically what we talk about is that the number one thing agents struggle with, myself included, is for lead generation, who to call and what to say. And we can sit there with a list of 300 people and our brains can overcomplicate it, and we'll select certain people and say, oh, these people will call, these people, they don't want to hear from us. And our brain will justify all these reasons why we should or shouldn't call someone. What DTD2 does is it takes all of the thinking out of who to call. And it says, okay, guys, there's 26 letters in the alphabet and there's 13 weeks in a quarter. So we're going to call 2 letters every week in that quarter. And therefore, in that 13-week period, we will have talked to all 26 letters of the alphabet, right? So you're going to sort your database by last name. And on week 1, you're going to call A's and W's. On week 2, you're going to call N's and R's. On week 3, you're going to call B's and S's. Or you don't have to invent that. It's written. KW has it. And we can make sure people on this call get a copy of that. It's right out of bold. But there you go. There's your system. Now you literally have just eliminated the question of who to call, right? And you're putting it in so that you're touching base with them once a quarter, because we all know if you go for 6 months without talking to someone, a lot can happen in their life and you might miss out on opportunity and they might miss out on value from you in that time period. So that's what DTD2 is in a nutshell. Now, what it doesn't do is tell you what to say. So I can share with you what my team does and what we're working on being a lot more structured on is having a go-to script. And I hate using the word script because it sounds robotic, but I love scripts in the sense of like a bulletized, like bullet points of these are the points that we want to cover with our people when we're engaging with them. We'll go into that in the beginning of every quarter. So we'll say this quarter for the 13 weeks that we're going to be calling, these are the things we want to be talking to our people about. We want to be telling them about our upcoming client event. We want to be asking them if they've had, like, it's winter season. So listen, have you gotten your furnace serviced yet? Don't forget to service your furnace annually. In fact, I'm going to connect you with our preferred service provider. He's offering all of our clients a discount. So here's his name and number. Feel free to call him. See, we're not asking for business. We're telling them about an event coming up. We're giving them something of value. Okay, so an item of value. And then, you know, the forward conversation. Who here knows what I mean when I say forward conversation? F-O-R-D. I see you thinking about it, Chris. Go ahead.
Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, I think.
Dreams, yes. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. It's 4 themes to talk to your people about. How's the family doing, right? How's little Emily doing? Oh my God, I see her on Facebook. She's getting so big. How's she doing, right? It's just giving you a framework to ask questions around, almost like water cooler talk, but it's all focused on them. So occupation, how are things going at Paychecks? Are you guys seeing a lot of applications for the employee retention credit? Like, now, by the way, how are you going to know they work at Paychecks? Because hopefully you wrote it down in your database and your database is making you smart so you can ask that question. And if you don't know where they work, maybe hopefully you at least know what they do. So, oh my gosh, how is tax season treating you? Then they're like, oh, they remember I'm a tax accountant, right? You don't necessarily need to know what firm they work for. But that's why the more information we collect on these folks, the better to make our database smart. Because like Jason said, if you have amnesia, or what did he call it? Not amnesia. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. If your memory fails you, you can rely on your database. Alzheimer's, I think he said, yes. Okay, so that's occupation. You're asking about their job. Inevitably, what are they going to ask you about when you ask them about their job? They're going to ask about your job. How's real estate? How is it going, right? So be prepared to say something really smart back, not just, oh, it's great, the market's really hot right now. Like, have a statistic ready. Oh my gosh, everybody is asking me about the real estate market. It is so crazy. Would you believe that inventory this January was 35% less than last January? Do you see how that statistic makes you sound like an expert versus, oh, it's a really hot market right now, right? Anybody can say it's a really hot market. Have a go-to statistic in your pocket for when they inevitably ask you, how's the market, okay? And then our recreation, right? So gosh, everybody's been, now this was something we said during the pandemic, right? Like, everybody's been locked in their home. What are you guys doing for fun nowadays? Like, how are you making the most of this? So you're just asking, do you have any vacations planned? Now that travel's kind of opening up again, where are you taking the family? Asking those kinds of questions. And then dreams, then you can launch into questions around, gosh, have you ever thought about where you might move someday, right? Future questions, getting a sense of when they might be thinking of moving next. And by the way, you don't have to answer, you don't have to literally be like, okay, I asked the family question, now I ask the occupation, and go in that like robotic order. It's just some themes to get you thinking about what to say so that you can be in the moment and not have to, like, you can listen to them, truly listen to their answer and not think about what am I going to say next, because you already have your themes that you're going to talk about. Make sense? We talk a lot about active listening, right? So that's the forward. And then the other piece you might want to consider thinking about saying is, like, by the way, we never really, when we talk with our clients, we're never really asking for business. Believe it or not, it's much more just a relationship call, come from contribution first and always. However, there's a point where you feel you've earned the right to ask for business, and we don't abuse it. Personally, you might decide it's your style to ask every single time. Cool. For us, our style is a little bit less direct than that, and it's seemed to work well for us. But there is a point, and I said to my team this quarter, guys, we've earned the right to ask for their business. We've done a lot of great client events. We do a lot of great giveaways. We've earned the right. Now, here's how we positioned it. Rather than ask, hey, who do you know looking to buy or sell? We would love to help them. Sometimes agents feel weird about that. I do too, because I don't like asking for something for me. But if I'm asking for help to help a client, it doesn't seem like I'm asking for me. So let me give you an example. One of the things we're talking with our database about this quarter is how we have a ton of buyers that are looking for help. So, hey, listen, Chris, you want to role play with me for a second? You can be my database contact.
Sure.
Take one for the team. Okay, cool. So, Chris, and we just went through the Ford. We've been talking for a little while, right? So you're asking me how the market's going, and inevitably it goes there. I say, you know what? The market is insane right now. Do you remember when you bought, Chris? Do you remember how how competitive it was a couple of years ago? It's probably twice as competitive now. I mean, the number of listings that we had last month was about 300 less than the year before. So it's super, super competitive. And here's the thing. I would actually love your help with something if you have a moment to think about it. And it's for my clients, right? My team has about 96 buyers in our car ready for a house. They are eager, just like you were 3 years ago, if you remember that feeling. These buyers are so eager, and there's just not enough homes to satisfy them. Every other agent has just as many buyers that they're working with, right? So listen, I'm just wondering if you know anyone that might be thinking of selling in the next 30 to 60 days that I can connect these buyers to, because they're desperate. And if you can help them, that would mean the world to me and the world to them.
Oh yeah, I saw that one of my neighbors was cleaning a lot of things out of their house. I'll go and check with them.
Oh, that would be amazing. Thank you. Let me know what they say. I would love to connect my clients. So we don't have to go any further, but do you guys see how that was not me asking for help to grow my business? That was, oh my gosh, can you do me a favor, do me a solid and help my buyers that are desperate because of the market right now? And they might not have someone. Like, most of the time, the answer is, you know what, not that I can think of right now. So then we'll just go deeper and say, okay, great. Well, I so appreciate you taking some time to think about that. If you happen to come across anyone at work, at church, at school, we'll give them some categories to narrow down so that it's not like, who do you know? And it's this big, bucket of people. We'll kind of narrow it down. If you happen to come across anyone at work, at school, or at church, give me a call. Let me know. I would love to connect my buyers with them. And then, that's how I would say more passive referrals come in. People will reach out because Chris just had a conversation and we were now top of mind. It might not happen in this conversation. And I think that that's one thing that agents can get, what's the word I'm looking for? Disenchanted, disappointed in, because they expect these immediate results from these calls. This is a long game, not a short game. Every once in a while, you'll get someone that says, you know what, actually, I'm thinking of listing, and that's awesome. But this is more about developing long-term relationships, staying top of mind, and being the first person they think of when they want to buy or sell, or they have a friend that's looking to buy or sell. Okay. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, I'm just curious, as a solo agent, I have somebody who's looking for a place, and just heard about somebody whose mother died and they might be selling the house. Would I still do that same thing? Because I don't really want a dual agency.
So can you, let's unpack this for a second. Can you just slow down and remind me the situation and who's who here?
Yes, so I have a friend who is looking to buy.
Okay.
She's pretty specific about wanting something in a certain area, and nothing is coming up yet. So she's willing to wait. But then I have another friend whose mother died, and I know that the house has been empty, And so that might go up for sale.
Okay.
And so I was thinking about saying, hey, are you thinking of selling your house? I might have a buyer for it, but then I would be creating a dual agency.
So listen, dual agency, you might not be creating a dual agency, by the way, and we'll get into that. But dual agency, it's not something that I recommend people chase and go after, because it does get a little sticky, but it's certainly not illegal. You certainly have the ability to do it. It just, everybody has to go in eyes wide open, and you have to make sure you inform everybody who you represent. So in this case, how I might handle it, Lisa, is if you can get the contact information for the family that has this house to potentially sell, and let them know you heard that they may have a property for sale, and that you represent a buyer and several buyers that may be interested in the property. Would they be willing to let your buyers see it? And what is the price that they would be willing to sell it for today? Right? You're not advising them on any price. You're letting them know you have a buyer, and you're just understanding what would be the price that they would be willing. If you could bring them a buyer and help them sell it without having to go through showings and staging and photos and all of that, if you could, create that marriage, what would be a number that they would be interested in getting for it? You're just asking them at that point.
Okay.
And if they want more information, or they're not willing to sell it off market, you can flip the script at that point and let them know, well, if you're not interested in that, I could have a conversation with you about what you could get from it in this market. And we could talk about listing it, right? At that point, your buyer could still put an offer in. It's just your buyer needs to know you are now a dual agent for this, which means you cannot advise them on price. You have to kind of remain Switzerland. You can't be neutral. You have to be neutral.
Yeah. And I don't know what the place looks like inside. I just know the location and the size. So if it's something that needs a lot of work, she might not want it. But yeah, it's hard because I'm sending these girls sympathy cards, and then I don't want to go to her and say, hey, do you want to sell your house? You want to sell your mom's house? I know she died. It just doesn't seem very sympathetic.
No, I hear you. It's about timing. It's a delicate thing, right? So it's about timing, and you do have something to offer of value, because that is usually a burden on the family, is how are we going to navigate this? So there is opportunity there for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if you have any more agency questions, just see me.
Okay.
Okay. So how do we feel about DTD2, guys? Is that something that we can sink our teeth into and we can execute pretty easily? Or is it just seem too much? Where's our head at?
I think it sounds pretty simple. If you're just starting with systems, it's not complicated.
Yeah, it's really not complicated, right? And I think Gary is famous for saying real estate is simple, not easy. Simple business, really. But it's not easy, or everyone would do it, right? The hard part is actually having the discipline to stick to it. Yeah. Hi, Katie.
Hi. So Bob has such a big database that sometimes when I bring things like this up to him as ideas, he's overwhelmed by the idea of, even though he's only going to call 2 letters a week, that's still maybe 150 people, right? So he's very overwhelmed by that a lot of times. So do you have any suggestions on how to make it less overwhelming?
I do. So a couple of things. One, I would do you give him the list so that he doesn't have to figure it out? You just literally put it in front of him? Okay.
Yeah. All the tasks and command come to me, and then I distribute them more.
Cool. Okay. That's one start. Our rainmakers need some direction, myself included. And then number 2 would be, okay, if that's going to overwhelm him and it's going to make him freeze to where nothing happens, that is working against us, not a system working for us, right? So let's modify it to fit what he is willing to do. Now, in bold, we're making 100 contacts a week, or we should be. That's the target, right? So 150, I could see how that might be a lot. But if you cut it in half and make it 75, all of a sudden it's a lot more manageable. So maybe with Bob, you make it DTD2, but instead of spread out over 13 weeks, spread out over 26 weeks. So you do 1 letter a week. So he's calling his database twice a year instead of once a quarter, which is probably more than he is now, which might be once a year or once every other year, right? So baby steps, you certainly take the wheel to modify it, because you want him to plug into it at some level.
Yeah.
Even if it takes a little bit longer. Thank you for that question. It was a great question.
Susan, I have a question too. I have a lot of people in my database from out of state. Do I contact them, or is that?
Oh
not
my
really
gosh.
worth my time?
Great question. Yes. And it's funny because Krista on my team, she has a ton of people out of state as well. And we are encouraging her to reach out to those folks for a couple of reasons. One, they very well could know people here locally still, right? There's plenty of times where I'll have a past client that sold and moved out of state that refers a sister or a brother or an aunt that wants to also move out of state. So definitely stay in relationship with them. And two, if you can establish yourself as the agent that connects people to other amazing agents, if you can establish yourself as the person that has an amazing agent referral network, you can be the go-to person. If they're looking to sell in their area, they'll call you and say, Nicole, do you know an agent in our area? We're looking to move here. You don't have to be a market expert where they live. Let's say they live in Virginia, right? You just have to establish yourself as someone that has really high standards for real estate agents, and they use you as a means to connect them with the best agents and be like a filter, right? So you could supplement your phone calls to them with some marketing around your out-of-state network, questions to ask agents when you're interviewing them, gear it towards that so that you can get referrals. You're welcome. The other thing I would ask you, Nicole, is do you segment your database or tag those people in any way to show that they are out of state?
I haven't done that, but yeah, I'll go through and do a tag for them.
Yeah, we call them OFFs, OFFS, out of state friends and family or something like that. I think it stands for.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, Susan, I'll add to this if you don't mind, in terms
Sure.
of from the perspective where I have an established system that works for me, and tipping it upside down and starting over with something new is, something that's frankly not going to happen, right? But you can use this to supplement that activity, ultimately with the goal of finding who's missing from your sphere, from your database, because we all have our phone list, our Facebook friend list, whatever example you want to use, that there's enough people on there that probably aren't on your mailing list or email list or whatever the example is, in Command or in wherever you're storing your data. And this can be a good way to go through it week by week and use the letters to, okay, who am I missing? Who have I not thought of that I'm not marketing to?
I love that. Love that. Yeah, you're right. We're creatures of habit. We get into a routine. So putting if you have no system, this is a great system to start with. If you have a system and this totally blows it up, the likelihood that you're going to change at this point is probably low. But how could you use this? I love that. And by the way, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'll reinforce it. A bold coach may say differently, although I think they're changing their tune a little bit on what a contact is. I don't necessarily only count it if it's a phone call, because the reality is I'm communicating with my people via text all the time. I'm communicating them on Facebook message all the time. Most people nowadays prefer a text than a phone call. So figure out how your people want to be talked to and then engage with them in that way.
Yeah, they to chime in, they did change it this time around, this session or whatever you want to call it. And just, essentially a back and forth. It doesn't have to be like a live interaction in terms of on the phone or in person, but if you can figure out a way to get communication going like that, that counts as a conversation. I think you have to be purposeful with it to not just have it be a, stop calling me or text or whatever, right? And have that count. But yeah, I mean, I always reflect back to like, I was in a team meeting before COVID. So it was like January of 2020. And one of the topics was like, guys, you got to keep in mind, it's borderline offensive to call somebody these days.
I
And
know.
like you mentioned earlier, like, it's like, why are you calling? What's wrong? Is everything okay? Like you get dodged and then they text you that, right? So adapt, whatever works. Text, slide into DMs, whatever the kids are doing these days. Just make it work however they want to be communicated with.
Yep. You can reach people with texting and social media messaging so much faster and so many more people in the same amount of time than you can with calls or leaving a voicemail, right? So adapt, use that technology. I love it. One thing I'll end with on this topic of systems around lead generation is something that we did in Bold a couple weeks ago and was also reinforced at Family Reunion. How many people here plugged into Family Reunion this year? Okay, so one big thing that they talked about, and this was in some of the breakouts, and this was also the keynote speaker, who is amazing. I've never heard of him before, but I want to go buy his book. His name is Sean Achor, Achor. He wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage, and another book, I forget what it's called, along the same lines. Basically, he studied happiness, and he talks about how, when you think of habits, happiness is a habit. And if you think of, I love this analogy he uses. He talks about when you brush your teeth. He says, humans, our teeth are basically only designed to last us. Like they should rot out in like 15 years or so for humans with a sugar diet. But humans have adapted and created a habit of brushing our teeth every day, which is why our teeth last us a lot longer than 15 years, right? So he got to thinking, like, why are we so willing to adopt a habit like brushing your teeth, but we're not necessarily willing or talking a lot about adopting habits to make us happier? Happiness doesn't just happen. There's things that we do to increase our level of happiness. So what are some of those habits? And he did a lot of studying. And one of those habits is daily gratitude. And he told a bunch of stories around it, but ultimately one of the takeaways was that it's not necessarily the act of saying you're grateful for something or writing it down, because if you do that for so many days in a row, it might become robotic. It's the act of scanning your world for what you're grateful for, actually thinking about it and going deep at a deeper level. So he challenged everyone with two things. One thing was, every day for 21 days, let me back up because this is really important. They did two tests. One was a group of people for 21 days thought of 3 things they're grateful for every day. Okay. And what they found was after like the 8th day, a lot of things became repetitive. Okay. And there was no real significant change in optimism at the end of the 21-day study. On the next set of people, they did a study where they challenged them to think of 3 unique things every day for 21 days, meaning you could never have a repeat. So that forced people's brains to think outside the box and not just go back to the same 8 things they were grateful for, right? Because as humans, we have some things and maybe we get lazy and we don't think any further. What they found in that group of people is that the act of scanning your life for things that you're grateful for and being forced to think of new things, 3 new things over that 21-day period every day, actually increased the level of optimism in those people. And they had a way of testing that. So that was a key learning. And then the other piece he challenged people to do was every day for 21 days, I want you to send a message, a text message, a phone call, an email. Take 2 minutes, Pick someone in your life and send a message of gratitude about something, about some way they've influenced you. And do it for 21 days straight. He said the interesting thing is that after 8 days, generally, people run out of people to talk to because they think about the immediate people in their life, right? Family, some key friends, some key team members, and then their brain starts to get lazy after 8 days. He said, if you can stick with it and you can think about that teacher that changed your life, that teacher that got you into writing, or that got you, the person that got you into real estate, that first client you had that took a risk on you, that first listing you had, or the first co-op agent that you really just had a great impression with, right? You start thinking outside your main circle, and you start sending them a note of gratitude. One, you're going to make their day, right? Who doesn't want to receive an awesome note like that? And two, you're going to start to develop a habit, and you can incorporate that into your lead generation, guaranteed. So I thought that was pretty cool. And we did that exercise at Bold where our coach challenged us to, he said, I want you to write down 5 people that you're grateful for and why. So we did it. And what I found is that I couldn't stop at 5. I had a list of like 12 because once my brain started doing it, it was just fun to think about who I'm grateful for and why. And then he gave us 10 minutes to call those people. And so, you know, we would call, we would leave messages, and a couple of people that I called, they were like so surprised that I called them. And they were so touched by the message that we both left that call feeling amazing, just like high on life. So maybe, you know, you can do that as part of your lead gen where you're sending gratitude notes on a daily basis. The universe will send it back to you, I promise. Lead gen should be fun. It should not be a chore. Make it fun, come from contribution, come from gratitude, and have fun.
Love that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. If you have a chance to look up Sean, I think it's S-H-A-W-N Achor, A-C-H-O-R. He does TED Talks. And I'm sure some of these stories will come out in some of his TED Talks. Phenomenal, phenomenal speaker. Any final questions before we wrap?
I have to go, but I just want to say thank you for your help and assistance. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining. I'm so grateful for all of you for joining us and for plugging into your business and sharing your ideas. Thank you for everyone who contributed. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.